Story 1. Backstory. During my college years, my pathophysiology class had a final project worth 50% of our total grade. Groups were assigned at the beginning of the semester. This was an extensive project that required work throughout the entire semester. Attempting to complete it at the last minute would likely result in poor performance. My group consisted of myself, 2 diligent female classmates, and a male student whom one of the girls was infatuated with. She insisted on adding him to our group because she found him attractive. I refer to him as Slacker whenever I recount this story due to his lack of effort. The 2 girls were excellent team members, and everyone contributed equally to the project, except for Slacker. Slacker never participated in any group work. He ignored all text messages and social media communications, only responding to the girl who liked him when she flirted. He rarely attended class, perhaps twice a month at most. He frequently posted photos of himself on vacations in tropical locations. I believe he spent more time abroad than in the country. 1 week before the project deadline, Slacker messaged the group inquiring about which textbook pages contained the information for his part of the project. We provided him with the necessary details and resources. We outlined everything for him. Any further assistance would have been equivalent to completing his portion ourselves. Slacker expressed gratitude and then disappeared. We assumed he was working on his assigned tasks, but we were prepared for a potential grade reduction due to the likely poor quality of his last-minute work. On the project due date, Slacker was nowhere to be found and ignored our urgent messages. The 3 of us, myself and the 2 girls, approached the professor and explained the situation. We provided screenshots of months of conversations showing our consistent efforts to involve Slacker in lab work and library sessions, where we offered to help him with his part. The professor was displeased and immediately sent an email to Slacker, copying the department head, stating that Slacker needed to complete his portion and attend the next class or receive a 0. While the rest of us would not be penalized. Can you guess the outcome? Slacker did not respond or appear, offering no explanations. The professor gave him a 0. It turned out that Slacker needed to perform well on this project to pass the course, as he had failed every test. With this failure, he was unable to pass that semester. I believe he had to retake the course during the summer, which meant he, or more likely his mother, had to pay an additional $1,300 for that class alone. A few months later, in the college bookstore, Slacker and his mother, whom I call Shouter, encountered myself and the other girl who disliked him. Shouter became extremely agitated, yelling at the girl and me, claiming we had constantly harassed her son and threatening to make it impossible for us to find employment. Shouter worked in the same field our degrees were in and held a position on the board of directors for the area's Public Health Alliance. She was a public figure and supposedly well-behaved and educated. Security soon escorted her out, but that wasn't the end of her plans. Shouter proceeded to drag the girl and me through every college meeting she could arrange regarding our non-existent negative behavior towards her son, where he alleged constant harassment without any evidence. This ordeal lasted for months, with the poor girl and I having to alter our class schedules and study times to avoid any classes or chance encounters with Slacker, as mandated by the college. It made our final year, or 2 semesters, extremely challenging because we couldn't be anywhere near Slacker. Otherwise, we could face disciplinary hearings or worse consequences. Now, for the resolution. The security company contracted by the college was the same one that handled security where I used to work. I was close friends with the night shift supervisor. We often socialized and played video games together. One night after finishing work, I asked him for a favor. In exchange for his silence about his assistants and the promise of an entertaining video to share with his friends, I requested permission to email the video to my personal account. After explaining the situation, including the date and time of the incident, he drove me to the campus. Shortly after the main building closed, we went to his security office, where they store recordings dating back to the security system's installation. He located the video of Shouter in the college bookstore, complete with audio of her yelling at my friend and me. He recognized Shouter, revealing that she had behaved similarly at another site he patrolled, but his superiors had instructed him to keep it confidential. I assured him he could maintain his discretion, but I intended to seek justice. After a quick email, I obtained the video. Over the next few days, I identified the other board members and sent them all an email containing the video of Schauder's outburst in the college bookstore, showing her screaming at a visibly confused young man and a frightened young woman. The audio clearly captured her threat to make it impossible for me or the girl to find work anywhere in the district, followed by her argument with security as they escorted her out. I received no replies from the board members, so I waited to see what would transpire. Schauder was removed from her position the following week after the video was shown during a meeting she attended. She lost her comfortable government job and was last seen working in a retirement home, according to a mutual acquaintance. I'm uncertain about Slacker's fate, but I heard from the same mutual friend that he never graduated and now works at a call center. The girl and I secured full-time employment immediately after graduating, encountering no difficulties. Additionally, the security guard was eventually hired by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, proving that good things can happen to good people. Story 2. This happened a few years ago. Our homeowners association had always been known for being sneaky and making false accusations against homeowners. In this day and age, with security cameras, it's easy to spot who the investigators are. Recently, a homeowner was told she needed approval before re-shingling her roof. The thing is, her roof hadn't been re-shingled in 10 years, and she had no plans to do so. Such mistakes, whether intentional or not, were common. However, a few years ago, we had our moment to shine. One morning, while I was temporarily living with my father, we decided to go out for groceries. To our shock, we found that his pickup truck had been smashed into. Nothing was stolen, it was just damaged. I still have pictures from that day, taken just before the police arrived. When the police arrived, they investigated and found that a rock inside the truck came from a house down the street. Unfortunately, they couldn't get anyone to admit to the crime, nor could they prove who did it. It was suspicious, though, because the rock was a unique type that no one else in the neighborhood had a round, polished stone. After this incident, I installed a security camera on my father's house. 2 days later, we received a homeowners association violation notice for a vehicle eyesore that needed to be removed. I was puzzled about how such a letter could have been written so quickly and began to suspect foul play. One day, we were home when there was a knock at the door. The homeowners association had actually called a code inspection officer. The week wasn't even over, so the parts to fix the truck hadn't been delivered yet. We weren't going to pay for expedited shipping for damages we didn't cause, and the truck was so old that the insurance would probably just total it. The truck was sentimental to my father, so he wasn't going to get rid of it. It still ran great. The code inspection officer told my father that vehicles that do not run need to be removed. They both paused and almost simultaneously asked, "Don't I know you?" It turned out that the code inspection officer attended the same church as my father, and they knew each other. This isn't where the story of compliance begins. We're just getting started. The officer told my father that if he could show the truck could start, he would report it as being in compliance with the code. My father started the truck without any issues, as the engine wasn't damaged. The officer told him to go about his day and have a good one. At this point, we were furious because we began to suspect that the homeowners association might have been involved since there was no way they could have known about the damage so quickly. Unfortunately, there were no neighbors on our part of the street with security cameras until I installed one on our house, so it didn't capture anything specific to our incident. Down the street, someone reportedly broke into a car as well, but the camera on their house couldn't see anything. Now, here's where the fun begins. A couple of months later, after nothing further happened, I decided to install a new dash cam in my car. I found a good one that uses very little power from the battery and can activate if there's any bump to the car, even when it's off. It just needed to be wired directly to the battery for this feature. A few days later, we received a violation notice for our mailbox being crooked. It wasn't crooked by much, but I did remember it recently having a slight angle. Oddly enough, I could have just fixed it, but my car was aimed straight at the mailbox. I thought, no, this couldn't be possible. It only records if there's a bump. I took out the memory card and, apparently, I hadn't configured it correctly because it had been recording the entire time. It never went into sleep mode. I watched as the investigator walked up to the mailbox, pushed it crooked, then wrote down his findings on his tablet and took a picture for records. I was appalled by what I saw. I had the proof I needed. Now, for the compliance part. The Homeowners Association wanted us to attend the board meeting and present what was going on at our address. We hadn't told them yet that we had pictures, but to summarize how our Homeowners Association works, the board hires an outside company to handle the groundwork. Let's call it Bentry Management. We went to the meeting and sat down. The person in charge of our account from Bentry Management, who looked very much like a Karen, was there. As the meeting progressed, we discussed what was happening at our house. We presented the timelines and explained how the truck was smashed, and just 2 days later, we received a letter. We asked what dates the investigator had been out during that time. Karen refused to answer and ignorantly argued that we should take better care of our belongings, as if it was our fault. Then, the mailbox incident came up. We told her that we had reasons to believe that the investigator was the one causing damage to our property and harassing us. Karen denied this and said it was impossible because she knew the investigator personally. "Oh, is that so?" I asked. She replied, "Yes, why?" I then pulled out my laptop from my bag, opened it to the video file already loaded, and showed it to the entire board. "Enter Exhibit A," I announced, playing the video. Karen's face turned bright red. She claimed that was not her investigator. I then pulled out the letter about the mailbox, complete with a date that matched the timestamp on the video. She still tried to claim it wasn't them, insisting it was a coincidence. She said, "I'm sorry, but you have a vandal, and it's not us." "Oh, it's not." I let the video play, knowing she was digging herself deeper. As the man walked towards my car, Bentry Management was plainly visible on his shirt. Karen was no longer red. She was as white as a ghost. The board looked at her and asked what she had to say. Karen was silent, making only a few noises, which I assumed were her brain trying to process what had just happened. I then brought up a previous case that came to mind before we left for the meeting. It involved a grass violation beside our house, an area that wasn't visible from the sidewalk due to the house's shape. I asked directly, "At any time, have your investigators walked on our property, illegally trespassing?" Knowing that, according to their rules, they weren't allowed to do that. Karen was visibly shaking and muttered, "No, of course not," with her head down, unable to make eye contact with me. She probably suspected I had more evidence, but unfortunately, I didn't. So, I asked again. She asked, "Why?" Our neighbors, who are lawyers and live right next to us, where this wall is, stood up and said, "Actually, that's not true. I have witnessed one of your investigators go between our houses and poke around the trash bins." Bingo. I hadn't realized she had this information. I couldn't have asked for better timing. Karen, at this point, started arguing with our neighbors about the lack of proof. The board proceeded to apologize for the incident and said they would discuss what actions to take in the future regarding this matter. With that, the meeting was over. A month later, we received a letter informing us that a new person would be in charge of Bentry Management, and new investigators would be assigned. She was dismissed that night. Since her dismissal, my father tells me we only get the occasional minor errors, but they are corrected immediately, and we haven't been bothered much anymore. Story 3. This incident occurred almost 11 years ago and recounts how my aunt got herself banned from my parents and my houses, as well as arrested. Hubby and I had visited some friends before joining Mom, Dad, and my siblings for a family holiday. As we were going to be away for 2 weeks, we asked Grandma to feed and walk our dog, Buddy, while we were away. Grandma loved Buddy and saw it as an opportunity to get some extra exercise. The day before we left, we went to Grandma's to drop off our spare house keys. As we were leaving, Aunt was arriving. Note: a few months earlier, Grandma had gifted me some money that she had been saving since my birth, as she saw that I was now responsible enough not to spend it on frivolous items. It went towards buying a new car, moving into my first house with hubby, and the rest into savings. Aunt found out and became furious. Even though Grandma had been doing the same thing for all her grandchildren, I just happened to be the oldest, so I received mine first. Aunt, what are you doing here? Trying to con more money out of Grandma? You're a disgrace, just like your horrible mother. I can't understand why no one else can see it. Me, go away. Just because Grandma won't give you cousin one's money doesn't give you the right to be so mean. I don't see why no one can see how much of a self-centered, stuck-up person you are. Oh wait, they do. That's why you have no friends. Cousins' fathers don't want anything to do with you, and no one in the family apart from Grandma cares about you. Calling to Grandma, thanks again. Grandma, love you. See you in 2 weeks. Aunt just stood there, turning several shades of red, while I walked to the car. Hubby was doubled over, laughing so hard he was pretty much crying. I had to grab him by the arm and drag him to the car. Grandma called me later, saying that I shouldn't have said what I did, but didn't disagree with what I said. Grandma's general response to Aunt by this point is, "She's my daughter, I have to love her." We went on our holiday and had an amazing time. When hubby and I got home, we found Buddy missing. Luckily, a neighbor who knew we were away had found him and kept him safe until we could pick him up the next day, and half our belongings missing: expensive TVs, DVD player, and our whole DVD collection, Xbox 360 and games, my jewelry, clothes, shoes, outdoor barbecue, etc. Our first thought was that someone had broken in, robbed us, and let Buddy go. He was more likely to lick you to death than bite you. But there was no sign of a break-in, and both doors were locked, so someone must have had a key. The only people who had keys were hubby, me, Mom and Dad, and Grandma, so I called Grandma. I knew Grandma had nothing to do with it, and had a feeling Aunt was behind it. Me. Hi Grandma, I was just wondering when you came around last to feed and walk Buddy. Grandma. Yesterday, about lunchtime. We went on a walk to the park. I gave him canned food and left plenty of dry food and water. Why? Is something wrong? Me. We just got home and found Buddy missing and half our stuff gone. But the doors are locked. I'm about to call the police. Grandma, that terrible woman. Aunt was here yesterday afternoon and then again last night. Your keys are in a different spot than I left them. I'm so sorry, sweetie. I was more in shock at hearing Grandma use such language than what Aunt had done. Me. It's not your fault, Grandma. I am calling the police, though. Grandma, go for it. Hopefully, it will teach her a lesson. While I'm on the phone with the police, neighbor comes over with Buddy and talks to hubby, who is understandably ready to confront Aunt. Neighbor. Hi, I'm sorry, but I found Buddy in our yard, and I know you guys were away, so we kept him. We didn't want him to end up in the pound. Hubby. Thank you. That's one less thing to worry about. Did you happen to see anyone here yesterday except Grandma? Neighbor. No, sorry. We were out all day, and Buddy was in our yard when we got home. I just figured Grandma accidentally left the gate open. Why, what's up? Hubby explains what happened, and neighbor offers to check the footage from their security cameras. Luckily, one was able to catch Aunt entering our house and her cousin one, and a guy loading our belongings into 2 utility vehicles and a station wagon. The police come and take fingerprints, statements from us, and the security footage. Understandably, Mom and Dad are furious as well and carefully look over everything to make sure nothing's missing. 2 days later, Aunt, cousin one, and the guy are arrested and charged with breaking and entering and theft. I can't remember the exact charges. They all get bail, and Aunt calls me. As soon as I answer, she starts yelling at me. Aunt, you little brat, how dare you call the cops on us? Me. How dare I call the cops? How dare you break into my house and steal thousands of dollars worth of stuff? Aunt, we didn't break in. We had a key. Anyway, it's not stealing, we're family. I'm entitled to take whatever I want. You need to drop the charges and tell the cops it's all a misunderstanding right now. How dare you get cousin one put in handcuffs and locked in a cell? My prince is too good for that. Me, now even more angry. You stole the keys from Grandma and took what isn't yours. If you return what you stole and apologize, we may consider dropping the charges. Aunt. Forget you, you stupid girl. We took what we felt were owed. Grandma gave you all that money when you clearly don't need it. My kids have nothing and deserve better than you. Drop the charges right now, you stupid girl. We're keeping everything. If you don't, you'll regret it. Me? God, you're stupid. It's not just my stuff but hubby's as well. How dare you let Buddy go? Luckily we have him back. You're lucky the cops got you before hubby did. I hope you all face the consequences of your actions. If you ever call us or set one foot back on our property, you'll regret it. I hang up on her, and hubby and I decide to call the police and ask for advice. We end up getting an interim apprehended violence order AVO to stop her from harassing us or coming back on our property. Aunt then calls Mom to try and get Mom and Dad to talk us into dropping the charges. But Dad ends up giving her a piece of his mind and tells her that she is not welcome at their house, and they will call the police if she does. So she tries Grandma next. Grandma tells her that she's ashamed of Aunt and cousin one, and we have every right to press charges. She adds that if Aunt didn't return everything that was stolen, the money that was put aside for cousin one would be given to us to replace everything. Aunt refuses, and Grandma does give us the money. When it finally goes to court, Aunt is sentenced to 3 months in jail. She also had other theft and fraud charges pending and 18 months parole. Cousin one is given a community order as he was only 17 at the time. The guy who we had not met before is given a good behavior order as Aunt had told him that hubby was her ex and she was moving out of their house and wanted help getting her stuff out. He apparently didn't question her as she had keys and Buddy knew her. We ended up dropping the AVO as it was a separate matter from the criminal proceedings, and Aunt kept getting the hearing delayed, and hubby and I couldn't keep taking time off work. Aunt ends up losing custody of cousins 2 and 3, who go to live with their father. Story 4. When I was in university, I started dating a guy who initially seemed wonderful. He was dedicated to his studies, fun to be around, attentive, and always surprising me with thoughtful gestures. He worked hard at his job, and I genuinely enjoyed spending time with him. However, as time passed, things began to unravel. He started skipping classes, and eventually, he barely bothered to attend at all. Worse still, he never helped around the house, never washed dishes, cleaned, did laundry, nothing. He was even fired from his job due to frequent absences. All he wanted to do was sit at home, play video games, or browse online forums. This was back in the days before social media was widespread. This situation left me to pick up extra shifts, sometimes double and triple shifts, all while attending classes and studying. I later discovered that this was a pattern for him. He would be very dedicated to whatever he set his heart on, but then he would get bored and fall back into his old, bad habits. Then, he would find a new passion, and the cycle would repeat. I knew I should have ended the relationship much sooner, but I held out hope that he would snap out of it, thinking that maybe it was just exam stress getting to him. I desperately wanted things to return to how they were, but it was not meant to be. I eventually caught him cheating and immediately threw him out. I was so stressed with everything going on that it wasn't until the next day that I remembered our joint savings account. There was a little over £5,000 in there, and except for a few £100s from him, the rest was money I had saved. I checked the account, and it was all gone. My ex had emptied the account and moved into a new apartment with his new girlfriend. I contacted the bank, but there was nothing they could do because he was an authorized user on the account. I also contacted the police, but they told me there was nothing they could do since it was a joint account, so no crime had been committed. They suggested taking it to civil court, but warned that I would probably spend more money on legal fees than I would recover, so it likely wasn't worth it. My ex had taken £5,000, and there was nothing I could do about it. I felt like such a fool. My anger grew when I saw his posts on various forums boasting about his new game consoles, new games, new television, and other gadgets all purchased with my money. I'm not usually a vengeful person. Petty at times, sure, but I've never wanted revenge as much as I did at that moment, and I knew just how to get it. During my time as a student, I worked temporary jobs every summer to help pay for my studies. One such job was at a debt collection agency. The work was as unpleasant as you might imagine, but it paid well, and it was only for a few months. My ex had been dodging debt for many years, and he was very proud of that fact. He was also proud that his debt was close to being legally unenforceable, and he hadn't paid a penny. For those unfamiliar, in the United Kingdom, creditors have about 6 years to collect a debt before it becomes legally unenforceable. This means the money is still owed, but creditors have no legal way to enforce payment, such as using debt collectors. My ex was just a few months away from reaching that point. However, what many people don't know is that making any payment on that debt resets the clock. If you pay any amount, the 6 years start from scratch. Previously, I had used my insider knowledge to help him avoid the debt. Now, I would use it to hit him where it hurt. By the end of our relationship, I was handling everything, including his debts. I had the paperwork, so I knew who he owed and how much. I called his creditors and honestly told them I was a friend calling to make a payment on his behalf. I didn't pretend to be him because that would be a big legal issue. The creditors weren't allowed to disclose any details to me, but they could accept a payment. I paid the minimum I could on each debt, about £1 on most, but one had a minimum payment of £1.50. It was the best £8.50 I ever spent. I also made sure to give them his new address and contact details, as well as his parents' address. Having worked in the industry, I knew they wouldn't change the address since I wasn't the account holder, but they would note it. They had various systems where they could search for his name against that address and see if anything came up. If they got a match, they'd change the address. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait. A few months went by, and then it happened. His post on the forums went from boasting about his new gaming computer to panicking about a court date. He called me, begging for advice. I told him to get lost. Seeing that I wouldn't help, he asked for advice in the forums. One of his online friends suggested not showing up to court, thinking that would prevent prosecution. It was terrible advice and completely untrue. In fact, not showing up is one of the worst things you can do, especially in civil court. This situation was becoming more satisfying by the minute. The court date came and went. Naturally, my ex didn't attend. A few weeks later, he posted photos of his empty apartment. Debt collectors had cleaned him out, taking every last one of his shiny new gadgets and toys. On top of that, he ended up with several county court judgments. These are a big deal and can seriously damage your credit history, making it hard to get anything beyond a basic bank account, nearly impossible to get credit including a mortgage, and it can also make renting a place difficult since many landlords don't like renting to people with these judgments due to the high risk. He also won't be able to find jobs in the financial sector. Now that he was broke and without his nice things, his new girlfriend left him. I never got my £5,000 back, but it felt good to see everything he bought with his ill-gotten gains taken away. I hope that £5,000 was worth it. For anyone wondering how a student could accumulate 6 years of debt, he started at the university I attended when he was 25. He had initially gone to a different university at 18, but dropped out at 19 and went into the workforce. Then, he convinced his parents to fund a business degree because he wanted to become an entrepreneur. And for anyone concerned about the age difference, I deferred my university start date by a few years so I could travel. I was 22 when we started dating. He was 26. Story 5. Yesterday was an odd day, and I was a bit shaken. I'm not sure if what I did qualifies as malicious compliance or not, so please tell me if it doesn't. There's my company and another company, and both cooperate occasionally. In my company, I'm one of 2 people who have a monthly ticket for trams and buses. The rest of the employees travel by car. The other company is located in the old city zone, where only cars with an official permit can travel and park. So, if my boss needs someone to go there, it's either my coworker or me. 2 days ago, my boss asked me to go because I was available while my colleague was on a lunch break. I was to deliver some documents. It's faster than hiring a courier because a courier has to take the package to a warehouse where it gets registered before being sent out. This process could take an entire day if the courier picks it up late. However, if my colleague or I go to the other company, it only takes 45 to 60 minutes. The way my boss explained it, I was to go to the other company, and they set a time interval of 3 p.m. to 3:30 p.m., so I was to leave around 2 p.m. Everything was clear. My boss wrote an email when I was leaving, so they knew when to expect me. They confirmed, and all was set. I arrived just after 3 p.m. I was supposed to leave the package, but that wasn't possible. Their lady manager was supposed to check it and then notify my boss if any documents were missing. But where was she? I missed her by 5 to 10 minutes. I was told to wait for her because no one else at the other company knew which documents were in the package. They reassured me that she'd be back in 15 minutes, so there was nothing to worry about. They also told me not to inform my boss, which I found strange. I grabbed my phone and sent a message, something like, "There's a misunderstanding," sending an email, followed by a detailed email explaining the situation without blaming the other company. I mentioned what they had told me. The timestamp was 3:03 p.m., so I was definitely not late. The odd thing was that when my boss checked the reply from the lady manager, she confirmed receiving the package, not just an employee, but the lady herself. I sat there, reading a book on my phone, all perfectly fine. About 30 minutes later, my boss asked if I had delivered the documents. Still, no sign of the lady manager. I asked, but they weren't allowed to call her. However, they assured me she'd be there any minute, so there was no need to inform my boss. I sent another text, "No lady manager around," sending an email, and added a detailed description, including their statement that they weren't allowed to contact her. Then, I kept waiting. Another 30 minutes passed, and still no sign of the lady manager. My boss called them, and they repeated what they had been telling me. I sent another email. "Boss, I listened to your conversation. They're not happy, but I couldn't wait outside. They insisted I stay with the documents." My boss responded, "No problem. Follow their suggestions and notify me immediately." So, I kept waiting. They offered me a mineral water, which I declined. I updated my boss and got an email back. Close to 4:40 p.m., the lady manager barged in, asking why I wasn't there earlier as they had decided. I grabbed my phone, read the timestamp, and showed her the email with the agreed-upon conditions. She turned a shade of reddish-purple, took the package, and told me I could go. I politely refused, explaining that I had been told repeatedly that she was supposed to check if any documents were missing. She insisted I leave, so I sent a text to my boss. "The lady manager doesn't want to check the documents," sending an email. I read the message aloud. She wasn't pleased, but finally, she decided to check the documents. I thanked her, waited for her email to my boss, and only left when my boss confirmed that she had indeed verified all the documents were in the package. Later, the lady manager contacted the owner of her company and blamed us. Thankfully, I had documented everything with those emails. When the owner called my boss, upset, it was easy to provide copies. Today, my boss called me into his office and allowed me to read the emails exchanged with the owner of the other company. There was also a lawyer present who explained that under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be allowed to read the emails, but since the lady manager insisted, we did something wrong, especially me. And as it concerned me, I was permitted to read them, even though I wasn't the recipient. They also asked me to print the emails directly from my account and take screenshots from my phone, plus write a detailed account of the incident, including the timestamps from my emails, which I did. I don't know what this was. A strange power play. An attempt to discredit the other company. I'm still not sure if it was malicious compliance or not. I don't think my boss or the lawyer will tell me more, possibly only if they try to pursue legal action. But why would they?